we're doing this through the eyes of a Giants player, and I think you kind of had yours pretty much when I asked you, but you had to think through it a little bit to make sure you wanted to deal with
Yeah.
maybe not winning the World Series, and you had to be okay with that.
Yeah, I did, because it was one of the first seasons I can remember really, really dialed in to the batting title chase, because one of our guys was in it. So I went with 1989 Will Clark. Probably still arguably that was his best season, right? I mean, after that, he had some good seasons in Texas, some decent seasons in Baltimore. But that season, 1989, with the Giants, I think was his absolute best. That was a team. Now, you probably have, your memory is like way better than mine when it comes to this stuff.
You know why? It's because I was always reading media guides.
Yeah, exactly. See, and I was into like all of baseball. So like 1989, I could tell you, what the Red Sox were doing, what the Royals were doing, the A's, the Giants, the Cubs. I could tell you all of that stuff. But mostly Giant stuff. But the opening day starters in 1989, you got Butler, Clark, Terry Kennedy, Maldonado, Kevin Mitchell, Rick Russell on the mound, Robbie Thompson, Jose Uribe, and Matt Williams.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the lineup, obviously, but that was your opening day starters. That was a fun team. Do you know who played the most games at third base that year in 1989?
Let me think about this.
This is a fun one.
1989.
89. Most games at third base.
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't know, but I will say that the great pinch hitting Ken Oberkfell was on that team, but he was past his prime as a third baseman, so I don't think it was him.
He was way past his prime. Number 10, Ken Oberkfell. Third base, most games played at third base, 83 games for Ernest the Furnace Riles.
Oh man, I should have known that one.
What else did Ernest Riles do? Do you remember?
Yeah, he hit like the
10,000th
home run in the Giants history.
That's right. Yeah. I don't remember what year that was. I think it was 90, 91, maybe. I can't
Something
remember
like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
But Will Clark had a battle with Tony Gwynn throughout that season. And they went into, let's see, let me just, I want to make sure I get all the right stats on Will Clark here. In 1989, Will Clark, he batted .332 in the first half and .335 in the second half. So super consistent. .321 against lefties, .340 against righties.
That .321 against lefties is amazing.
That is, especially, I mean, because it tells you he didn't really have a hole in his swing. If you try to pitch him inside, he was still going to crush you.
Yeah.
He was going to turn on and just rip it down the line. Not necessarily hit a home run, but he was a great pull hitter. He was a great all field hitter, but just a fantastic pull hitter. He would hit some rockets to right field. 325 at home, 341 on the road. He finished, I didn't believe this one when I saw it too, because he's not a leadoff hitter, but he finished first in the National League in runs scored with 104.
Mm-hmm.
Second in hits with 196, third in RBIs with 111, fourth in doubles with 38. Here's a good one. Third in triples with 9. That tells you what kind of season he had. Spray hitter.
Jose Canseco called him a 3-toed sloth with no arms, and he still hit 9 triples.
That's all he had to do is go, Jose, I finished third in 1989 in triples with 9. 546 slugging. On base was 407. So they go into the final 3 games of the season. Will Clark is leading the batting race with 333, and Gwynn is 332. And they're playing against each other. So I don't know if you remember that. That was a fantastic 3-game series to watch on TV, because we're sitting there going, man, the Giants are wrapping this thing up. They're winning the West. And now they got to deal with Will Clark needs to stay hot, get some hits. Tony Gwynn goes 7 for 13 in the series.
Will's like pitching staff. Come
Yeah,
on,
yeah,
help a
yeah. He's
brother
like,
out.
he's like, what am I supposed to? How am I supposed to? I got to go now. I got to go. I got to go 6 for 13. He goes 4 for 12. So he finishes, goes into the final day of the season 330 or final 3 game series 333. Finishes 333. Gwynn goes from 332 to 336. Wins the batting title, and of course the Giants go on to play the Cubs in the NLCS. I went to game 5 that Will Clark shot up the middle in the
Oh,
bottom
yeah.
of the 8th. I was at that game, left field bleachers. The place was rocking. I think it was rocking more than the earthquake, honestly. I mean, it was insane. But that was the famous series where the game 1 in Chicago, he reads Greg Maddox's lips, or the pitching coach. I think he read the lips of the manager, right? So it's something about going to pitch him inside.
No, I think it was Maddox, because they believe that because of that moment, people started shielding their words into their gloves after that moment.
Yeah, that's right. And so game 1, he hits 2 home runs. He hits a grand slam and a solo shot, goes 4 for 4, drives in 6 runs, and then goes on the rest of the series. What did he hit, like 660 in
Him
that
and
series?
Mark Grace going
Oh
mano
God.
a mano in that series.
Yeah, and that was insane too, because Mark Grace was up there in the season in batting as well. Um, Sandberg had a great season, but Giants go on to win it in 5. And then on to the 1989 World Series. We know how that goes. First 2 games, sluggish, did not play well, go down 2-0 to the A's. Earthquake happens. What is it? 10 days later it
Yeah,
resumes,
so
I think.
long break.
Very long break. And then everybody gets to go back to their number 1 and number 2 starters again. Giants just cannot even pull out a game. I had tickets for game 5 for the World Series.
Oh, wow.
Because that would have been in Oakland, right? First 2 games were in San Francisco.
No, I think the first 2
No,
games were in
first 2 games
Oakland.
were in
Yeah.
Oakland. So it was in San Francisco. It was at Candlestick. I had one of those, one of the boxes up there, my uncle's corporation or something had. And so we had game 5 tickets, and it never happened.
Yeah.
But that was brutal. But great season by Will Clark. He ended up hitting on the season 333. Rest of the stats were just absolutely insane. 111 ribs. That was the
a
Pacific Stock
fascinating.
Exchange.
Oh, yeah, I had that poster.
Yeah.
I definitely one of the fascinating stats. Okay, so you think about Kevin Mitchell. The Giants trade for Kevin Mitchell in 87.
87, right?
He's like
First
like
game in Wrigley, 2 home runs, right?
he's like a third baseman at this
Yeah.
point, right? He's just like a third baseman who can't really play third base. And they figure out, that he needs to be an outfielder. So in 88, he goes to the outfield. And all of a sudden, he becomes like a home run hitter, like a power hitter. Then in 89, he's like, what did he hit? 47 jacks maybe in 89.
Yeah, 47. Yep.
So he's the reason why Clark didn't win the MVP, because they had the top 2 guys in the MVP voting, and Kevin Mitchell wins. But in 88, Will Clark has intentionally walked 27 times.
Jeez.
In 89, with Kevin Mitchell hitting right behind him, he's only intentionally walked 14 times. In 88, Will Clark has 100 walks on the season. In 89, he only has 74. So you could correlate the 282 batting average in 1988 to 333. Not to say that it is solely because he's getting more pitches to hit. He was also on one. He also just had a better season.
Yeah.
But that is a 50-point increase in batting average.
That's
and
crazy.
a 30, like a 36-point increase in slugging, and like almost a 60-point increase in OPS. So all of that is just because he had a guy hitting behind him, and so they had to throw to him. And so that was I always like that part of it, because it just shows you what happens when you have somebody hitting behind you that the team fears. Like, you're just going to get more pitches to hit, and Clark proved it by hitting, almost 50 points or over 50 points higher on the batting average. So I thought that was that's a pretty cool stat.
Yeah, something we need to do this year. badly. We need to not have guys that you can walk, get on the base paths. They clog it up because they can't run. Because
Yeah.
that's the other thing too. Right now, you can walk Giants batters because they're so slow on the base paths.
Yeah,
So.
they're just stationary, station to station baseball, and then you get guys on, then they strike out, and then you go back and back on defense. A couple of interesting things about Clark. You know, he's not going to make the Hall of Fame. He didn't even hit 300 home runs for his entire career. But MVP voting, 1987 is still his highest home run total in his history. 35 jacks in 87. So a second full year in the league. He finishes 5th in the MVP voting. 88, he also finishes 5th in the MVP voting. 89, he is 2nd in the MVP voting, only to Kevin Mitchell. He wins his first of 2 Silver Sluggers. In 91, he is 4th in the MVP voting, even though they were not a good team at that time. He wins his 2nd Silver Slugger award, and his only Gold Glove was in 1991. And then his 1994 year, which was strike shortened season, he actually finishes 15th in the MVP his first year in Texas. But I always look to that 1998 season that he has, because, you know, Clark goes from 29 jacks in 1991, and he doesn't hit 20 home runs for another 7 years. And all of a sudden in 98, now I'm not saying Will the Thrill was juicing.
No,
because he still looked like he had like just skinny arms, but he does hit 23 home runs, kind of like a comeback season for him in 1998. And he has like kind of like a retro year, 23 jacks, 102 RBI at his year 34 season. So he had to show them. He's like, look, I got one more like really good season in me. And he stayed healthy, which was the other thing, because all those other years that he didn't get to 20 jacks again, he was missing at least 25 to 30 games, and even more in some cases every season. So
we need to go back and look at the Farmer's Almanac and see how warm it was in Texas that summer.
In
1998. Maybe that has something to do with it, because all of a sudden pop up to 23 home runs when you're hitting 12 and 13. But he was injured. He had didn't he have leg issues?
He had lots of issues, and some of it was because he didn't really believe in like the physical fitness aspect of it. He didn't want to feel too bulky because he liked his swing. You know, he's a good old boy too. He wasn't gonna, he was gonna take his time off, and he wasn't gonna necessarily be running bleachers and stuff. That just wasn't his style. So